Get that pile of trash off the dining table, Dad. We have guests coming in 10 minutes and I don't want them seeing your old scrap paper. My son Lucas didn't even look me in the eye when he said it. He just wiped a crumb off the mahogany table I had bought for him 10 years ago and pointed a finger toward the hallway. The trash he was talking about was a heavy cream-colored envelope with a red wax seal that I had just retrieved from my safe deposit box that morning. It was the deed to a $3 million cattle ranch on the coast of New Zealand, a place I had bought quietly 20 years ago as a retirement dream. Today was my 70th birthday. Lucas hadn't said happy birthday. His wife Brenda hadn't said it. My two teenage grandsons were too busy playing video games to even look up. I stood there holding the paper that could change their lives instantly and realized I didn't want to give it to them anymore. Before I tell you what I did next, please like and subscribe to follow this story. I picked up the envelope. My hand shook a little, not from age but from a quiet, burning anger. I am a man who has worked with his hands my entire life. I built houses. I laid foundations. I know the difference between a load-bearing wall and a piece of drywall that you can punch a fist through. Standing there in my son's living room, I realized the foundation of this family was rotten. I walked slowly back to the small guest room they let me stay in. It used to be a storage closet, I think. It barely fit a twin bed and a dresser. The walls were thin. I could hear Brenda in the kitchen. She was complaining about the cost of the catering for tonight. They were throwing a party, but it wasn't for me. It was for Brenda's promotion at her marketing firm. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the envelope. I thought about Sarah, my late wife. We had bought the land in New Zealand 2 decades ago. We were on a trip back when the business was booming and we had cash to spare. We saw this green valley that rolled right down to the ocean. It was wild and rough, just like I like it. The farmer selling it was in debt. We made a deal on a handshake and a wire transfer. Sarah called it the edge of the world. We planned to move there when I turned 65. But then the cancer took her. After Sarah died, I lost my spark. I sold my construction company. I gave Lucas a massive chunk of the money to buy this big house in the suburbs. I paid for the cars. I paid for the private schools for the grandkids. I thought that was what a father was supposed to do. I thought if I took care of them, they would take care of me. I was wrong. I looked at the calendar on the wall, October 14th, the big 70, a milestone. Most men get a dinner, maybe a watch or at least a card. I got told to move my trash. I could hear the doorbell ringing. The guests were arriving. I could smell expensive cologne and perfume wafting under my door. I heard laughter, the clinking of glasses. I wasn't invited, not explicitly. I was just the old man who lived in the back room. Sometimes they trotted me out if they needed someone to watch the grill, but tonight they had hired caterers. I was surplus to requirements. I decided to go out there anyway. I wanted a glass of water. I walked out into the hallway. The living room was packed. People in suits and nice dresses were standing around eating tiny appetizers. Lucas was holding court by the fireplace. He looked good, I have to admit. He looked like me when I was 30, tall, broad shoulders. But his eyes were shifting around the room, looking for the most important person to talk to. He saw me. His face tightened. He excused himself from a conversation with a tall man and walked over to me. He grabbed my elbow a little too hard. "Dad," he hissed. "What are you doing? You're wearing your flannel shirt." "It's the only clean shirt I have, Lucas," I said. "The washing machine has been broken for a week and you haven't called the repairman." He rolled his eyes. "Just stay in the kitchen, okay? Or better yet, go for a walk. Brenda's boss is here. I don't want you rambling about your old construction stories." I pulled my arm away. "I built the office building Brenda's boss works in," I said calmly. Lucas laughed, a cold, short sound. "Yeah, 30 years ago, Dad, nobody cares. Just grab a plate and go back to your room." He turned his back on me. That was the moment. That was the exact second the last thread of obligation snapped. I wasn't his father anymore. I was a nuisance. I walked to the kitchen. The island was covered in food. There was a cake. It said, "Congratulations, Brenda," in big blue icing. I cut myself a slice of bread and poured a glass of tap water. I sat at the small breakfast table in the corner, the one they used for stacking mail. And there it was, the envelope. I had left it on the table when I came out to get water, right next to a pile of Lucas's unpaid bills. Brenda came rushing in. She was flushed and holding an empty wine bottle. She saw me and sighed. "Arthur, can you please take the trash out? The bin is overflowing and the caterers are busy." I looked at her. "Happy birthday to me," I said softly. She paused. She actually looked confused. "What, today? It's my birthday. I'm 70. "Oh," she said. The look on her face wasn't guilt, it was annoyance. "Arthur, we are in the middle of a huge event. We can't do this right now. We'll get you a cupcake later, okay? Please just handle the trash." She grabbed another bottle of wine and ran back to the party. I sat there. I took a sip of water. Then Lucas walked in. He was looking for a corkscrew. He started rummaging through the drawers. He was agitated. "Where is it? Where is the good opener?" he muttered. He looked at the table. He saw the thick, cream-colored envelope. The red wax seal caught the light. It looked official. It looked expensive. "What is this?" he asked. He picked it up. I took another bite of bread. "Just some scrap paper," I said. He turned it over. He saw the return address embossed in the corner. Rutherford and Associates, International Land Trust, Wellington, New Zealand. He frowned. New Zealand? Why are you getting mail from New Zealand? He didn't wait for an answer. He opened it. He has never respected my privacy. He pulled out the deed. It was a beautiful document, thick parchment with a map attached. He read the first line. He froze. Deed of ownership, 2,000 acres, coastal rights. Wait, he looked up at me. His eyes were wide. Dad, what is this? It's the ranch, I said. What ranch? The one I bought with your mother before she passed. Lucas looked at the map. He looked at the valuation attached to the front page. Current estimated market value, 3.2 million US dollars. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The corkscrew was forgotten. You own this, he whispered. I nodded. I was going to show you tonight. I was going to tell you that I was thinking of selling it. His voice cracked. Dad, this is a fortune. Why didn't you tell us? I stood up. I felt tall again. My back didn't hurt. I kept it for a rainy day, I said, but I realized it's been raining for a long time. Brenda came back into the kitchen. Lucas, the boss is waiting for the toast. What are you doing? Brenda, look at this, Lucas said. His voice was trembling. He shoved the paper into her hands. She read it. Her eyes scanned the numbers. She gasped. She looked at me, then at the paper, then back at me. Suddenly, the annoyance was gone. Her face transformed. It was like watching a mask slide into place. A smile appeared, a warm, fake, terrifying smile. Oh, Arthur, she exclaimed. Oh my goodness, is this yours? It is, I said. She rushed over and hugged me. I stood stiff as a board. She smelled like expensive Chardonnay and ambition. Happy birthday, she squealed. Why didn't you say anything? Lucas, why didn't you tell me it was your father's birthday? We need to celebrate. Lucas was already pouring a glass of the good wine. Here, Dad, have a drink. Sit down. Don't sit on that hard chair. Come into the living room. I don't want to disturb the guests, I said. Disturb them. You're the guest of honor. Lucas said. He was sweating. I could see the gears turning in his head. He was calculating. He was thinking about his debts. He was thinking about the mortgage he was struggling to pay. He was thinking about how $3 million solves everything. They ushered me into the living room. Lucas clapped his hands. Everyone, listen up. The room went quiet. I want to make a special toast, Lucas said, putting his arm around my shoulder. It felt heavy and false. Today is a very special day. It is my father's 70th birthday. This man is the reason I am who I am today. He is a builder, a visionary, and he has just shared some incredible news with us. The guests clapped politely. I looked at their faces. They didn't care. They just wanted more wine. Lucas leaned in close to my ear. Dad, we should talk about this property. You know, managing something that far away is hard. The taxes, the upkeep, it's too much for a man your age. Brenda and I can help. We can put it in the family trust. We can manage the sale for you. I looked at him. I looked at the son I had raised. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. I remembered paying for his first truck. I remembered him skipping my wife's funeral because he had a networking event. I stepped away from his arm. You're right, Lucas, I said. My voice was loud enough for the room to hear. Managing it is a lot of work. Exactly, Brenda said, nodding vigorously. We'll handle it. We can fly out there next month, maybe turn it into a resort, or just sell it and invest the money right here. We could build an in-law suite for you, a real one. I reached out and took the deed from Brenda's hand. I folded it slowly. I don't need an in-law suite, I said. Then what's the plan, Dad? Lucas asked, a desperate smile on his face. I looked around the room. I saw the empty plates. I saw the superficial wealth. I saw the hollowness of my son's life. I'm leaving, I said. What? Lucas laughed nervously. You're tired. Go to bed. We'll talk in the morning. No, I said. I mean, I am leaving tonight. I have a flight at 11:00 p.m. The room went silent. You see, I continued speaking to the room now. My son forgot my birthday again. He told me to move my trash. He told me to stay in the kitchen. But this piece of trash is my ticket out of here. Lucas's face turned red. Dad, stop it. You're embarrassing us. I'm not embarrassing you, Lucas. You did that yourself. I walked toward the front door. Lucas ran after me. He grabbed my arm again. This time I grabbed his wrist and removed his hand. My grip was iron. Years of swinging a hammer don't disappear just because you have gray hair. Dad, be reasonable, he pleaded. You can't live in New Zealand alone. You're 70. You need us, I need you, I asked. I looked him up and down. I pay for this house, Lucas. I know you're 3 months behind on the mortgage. I saw the notices. I've been paying them secretly so you wouldn't lose the roof over your head. His face went pale. Brenda gasped. The guests were whispering now. I thought I was helping, I said. I thought if I kept giving, you would eventually grow up. But you're just a child waiting for a handout. Dad, please, he whispered. The deal, the ranch, we can split it. I shook my head. There is no we anymore. I walked to the closet and pulled out my duffel bag. I had packed it that morning. I had known deep down that this would happen. I had hoped I was wrong. I had hoped for a cake. I had hoped for a happy birthday. If they had given me a single card, just a piece of paper with a handwritten note, I might have stayed. I might have sold the land and given them half. But they gave me nothing, so I kept everything. I opened the front door. The night air was cool. Where are you going? Brenda cried out. Home, I said. My real home. I walked down the driveway. I didn't look back. I called a taxi from the corner. The flight was long. My joints ached. But when I landed in Wellington, the air smelled different. It smelled like salt and green grass. I took a small plane to the coast. I rented a truck. I drove out to the property. It was exactly as I remembered. Green hills rolling down to jagged black rocks, the ocean crashing against the shore. There was a small cabin on the property that the previous owner had built. It needed work. The roof leaked. The porch was rotting. Perfect, I thought. I spent the next 6 months working. I fixed the roof. I rebuilt the porch. I cleared the brush. I woke up with the sun and went to sleep with the sound of the waves. I lost weight. My hands got calloused again. I felt 20 years younger. I didn't hear from Lucas for a month. Then the letters started coming, apologies, begging, then threats. He said he would sue me for elder abuse of myself, claiming I wasn't in my right mind. He wanted power of attorney. I hired a local lawyer, a sharp woman named Kahu. We sent a simple reply: I was competent, I was happy, and if he contacted me again, I would cut him out of the will entirely. But here is the part that gave me the most peace. The quiet justice. I didn't just sit on the land, I found a purpose. I met a young couple in the nearby town. They were trying to start a sustainable farm, teaching local kids how to grow food and care for the land. They reminded me of Sarah and me when we were young, full of fire but no money. I subdivided the land. I kept 50 acres and the cabin for myself. I put the other 1,950 acres into a conservation trust. It can never be developed. It can never be turned into a resort. It can never be sold for quick cash. And the management of that trust, I gave it to the young couple. They get a salary. They get to live there. They get to build something real. I sent Lucas a copy of the new deed. I imagined him standing in his kitchen holding the paper. I imagined him reading the clause that said the land was now protected in perpetuity. I imagined him realizing that $3 million had just turned into a nature reserve that he couldn't touch. He called me once after that. Dad, he said. Why? Because I said, you wanted the value of the land. I wanted the value of the life. I hung up. I'm 71 now. I spent my birthday yesterday sitting on my porch watching the sun go down over the water. The young couple came over. They brought a cake. It was homemade. It was lopsided. It tasted like cinnamon and apples. They sang happy birthday. It was the best birthday of my life. I don't hate my son. I just feel sorry for him. He's still chasing things he can't catch. He's still trying to impress people who don't care. He's stuck in a prison of his own making. Me, I'm free. Sometimes the hardest thing a father has to do is stop being a father and start being a man again. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can't buy love, and you certainly can't buy respect. I look at my hands. They are old hands, but they are strong hands. They built a life once. And now, out of the world, they built another one. If you have people in your life who treat you like furniture, who only speak to you when they need something, take a look at what you're holding on to. Maybe it's time to pack a bag. Maybe it's time to find your own patch of green grass. Don't wait until you're 70. Do it now. Because the only thing worse than being forgotten by your family is forgetting yourself. I finished my coffee. The sun was fully up now. I had a fence to mend. I stood up, grabbed my tool belt, and walked out into the day. The wind was blowing. It was a good day to be alive. The screen door slammed behind me with a familiar rattle. It was a sound I had heard my whole life, a sharp crack that echoed off the siding. The wood around the frame was peeling, showing gray underneath the white paint. I made a mental note to scrape and paint it before winter set in, but the list of things to do was always longer than the day itself. I walked across the porch. The boards creaked under my boots. It was the heavy tread of work boots, steel-toed and caked with the dried mud from yesterday. I went to the shed to get the rest of my gear. The air inside the shed was thick and smelled like oil and gasoline and dust. It was a smell that never changed. It was the smell of work. I grabbed the wire stretchers and a bucket of staples. The bucket was heavy, the metal handle digging into my palm even through the calluses. I threw everything into the back of the old pickup truck. The truck didn't start on the first try. It groaned and coughed, complaining about the morning chill just like my knees were. On the second turn it caught, rumbling into life with a shake that rattled the dashboard. I drove slow down the dirt track toward the south pasture. The grass was high on either side, yellow and dry. We needed rain. The dust kicked up behind the truck in a long brown cloud that hung in the still air. I parked near the line of cedar trees that marked the edge of my property. The fence here was old. My grandfather had put some of these posts in, and they were leaning now, tired of standing up against the wind and the weight of the cattle. I got out and walked the line. The wire was loose in 3 spots. A deer had probably tried to jump it and got a leg caught, or maybe a calf had pushed too hard trying to get to the grass on the neighbor's side. The grass is always greener over there, they say. I tested a post with my hand. It wobbled. Rot was eating it at the base, right where the wood met the earth. I kicked the dirt around it. It was soft. I would need to dig it out and set a new one, but not today. Today was just for patching. I set my bucket down and pulled on my leather gloves. They were stiff and cold. I had to work my fingers to get them to bend right. I picked up the fencing pliers. They were heavy, solid steel with rust in the joints. I liked the weight of them. They felt like a real tool, not like the plastic junk they sell at the hardware store in town now. I found the break in the top wire. The barbed wire was twisted and snapped, curled back like angry snakes. I grabbed one end and pulled. It was tight. I had to lean my whole weight back to get any slack. The barbs caught on my sleeve, snagging the flannel shirt. I didn't care, it was an old shirt. As I wrestled with the wire, I looked at the post next to me. There was a notch cut into the top of it. I ran my gloved thumb over the wood. I remembered that notch. I was 10 years old. It was summer, hot and sticky, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer above the road. My dad was fixing this same stretch of fence. He was wearing his blue cap, the one with the sweat stain around the brim. He was smoking a cigarette, the smoke drifting up into the cedar branches. "Hold it steady, boy," he had said. His voice wasn't loud, but you heard it. You always heard it. I was holding the post while he tamped the dirt down with a heavy iron bar. My arms were shaking. The post was heavy treated pine and it smelled like chemicals and sap. I let it slip just an inch. Dad stopped. He leaned on the tamping bar and looked at me. He didn't yell, he just looked. His eyes were blue, pale like the sky in winter. "You tired?" he asked. "No, sir," I lied. My shoulders were burning. "Then hold it straight. The fence don't care if you're tired. The cows don't care. If this post is crooked, the whole line is weak, you understand?" "Oh, yes, sir." He took a knife from his pocket, a small folding knife with a bone handle. He carved a notch into the top of the post. "This here is the mark," he said. "You line the wire up with this. If you can't hold the post, you look at the mark. It tells you where you need to be." We finished the fence that day. My hands were blistered and raw. Dad gave me a sip of his water from the metal canteen. It tasted like tin, but it was the best water I ever drank. He put his hand on my shoulder as we walked back to the truck. He didn't say good job, he just squeezed my shoulder. That was enough. I blinked and the memory faded. The post was gray now, not the bright yellow of new pine. But the notch was still there, worn smooth by 40 years of rain and wind. I lined the wire up with it. It was still true. I spliced the broken wire, twisting S together in neat tight loops. It had to be tight. Loose wire was dangerous. I used the pliers to crimp it down, the metal groaning as it bent. I gave it a tug. It held. It sang a little high note when I plucked it, like a guitar string. I moved down the line to the next spot. The sun was higher now, warm on my back. I took off my jacket and threw it on a fence post. The wind picked up, rustling the dry leaves in the ditch. It sounded like whispering. I was hammering a staple into a post when I heard an engine. It wasn't my truck. It was a deeper, smoother sound. I turned around and saw a white pickup coming down the road. It was new, clean, with no mud on the tires. It slowed down as it got close to where I was working. The truck stopped and the window rolled down. It was Carter. He lived about 5 miles down the road. He wasn't a farmer, not really. He worked in the city and just lived out here for the view. He was a nice enough guy, but he didn't know much about fences. "Morning," Carter said. He leaned out the window. The air conditioning was blasting inside his cab. I could feel the cold air escaping. "Morning, Carter," I said. I lowered the hammer. "Fixing the line?" he asked. He pointed a clean finger at the wire. "Just patching," I said. "Winter's coming." Carter nodded like he understood, but I knew he didn't. He hired people to fix his fences. "Looks like hard work," he said. "It's work," I said. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. He looked nervous. He looked at the field behind me, then back at me. "You hear about the Miller place?" he asked. I stiffened. The Miller place was the farm directly to the east. Old man Miller had died last spring. His kids lived in Chicago and Atlanta. "What about it?" "Sold," Carter said. "Yesterday, some group from the city, developers, I think." The wind seemed to get colder all of a sudden. I gripped the hammer tighter. "Developers," I repeated. The word tasted like sour milk. "Yeah," Carter said. He looked uncomfortable. "They say they're gonna put in houses. 5-acre lots, ranchettes they call them." I looked out at the horizon. I could see the Miller's barn from here. The red paint faded to pink. I had helped raise that barn after a tornado took the old one down in '88. "That's good land," I said quietly. "Good soil, shame to cover it with concrete." "It's the way things are going," Carter said. He sounded apologetic. "Property values are going up though, might be good for you if you ever decide to sell." I looked at him. I looked right into his sunglasses. "I ain't selling," I said. Carter shifted in his seat. "Right, of course, just saying. Well, I gotta get to town. Good luck with the fence." "Take care," I said. He rolled up the window and drove off. I watched his truck disappear around the bend. The dust settled back onto the road. Silence came back, but it felt different now. It felt heavy. Houses, ranchettes, strangers living right next door, people who would complain about the smell of manure and the noise of the tractor, people who didn't know that you have to notch the post to keep the line true. I turned back to the fence. I grabbed a staple and held it against the wood. I swung the hammer hard. Whack. The staple went in deep. Whack. I hit it again. I hit it until the metal was buried in the wood. I worked for 3 more hours. I didn't take a break. I moved down the line, checking every post, every staple, every inch of wire. I needed to make sure it was strong. I needed to make sure the boundary was clear. This was my land. This was my dirt. Around noon, my stomach started to growl. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with the back of my glove. My lower back was aching, a dull throb that I had grown used to over the years. I walked back to the truck and sat on the tailgate. I opened my thermos and poured a cup of coffee. It was lukewarm now, but it was still coffee. I sat there and looked at the field. A hawk was circling high above, looking for a mouse. It dove, tucking its wings, dropping like a stone. It disappeared into the tall grass and then flew up again, empty-taloned. Even the hawk had bad days. I thought about my wife, Sarah. She had been gone for 5 years now. She used to bring me lunch when I was working the south pasture. Ham sandwiches on white bread wrapped in wax paper. An apple. Sometimes a slice of pie if she had been baking. I closed my eyes and I could hear her voice. "You're working too hard," she would say. She would be standing right there in her yellow sundress, the wind blowing her hair across her face. "Got to get it done," I would tell her. "The work will be there tomorrow," she'd say. "Sit with me a minute." And we would sit on the tailgate just like I was doing now and watch the clouds move across the sky. She would talk about the garden, about the tomatoes coming in, or about the letter she got from her sister. I wouldn't say much. I just liked listening to her. Her voice was soft, like rain on a tin roof. I opened my eyes. The spot next to me was empty, just the rusted metal of the truck bed. I swallowed the last of the coffee. I stood up and stretched. My knees popped. I threw the thermos back into the cab and went back to the fence. There was still 100 yards to check. The next section ran through a low spot where the water gathered when it rained. The ground here was black and boggy. The mosquitoes were already out, buzzing around my ears. I swatted at them and kept walking. I found a post that was completely snapped off at the base. It was lying in the mud, still attached to the wire, dragging the whole fence down. This one I couldn't just patch. I had to fix it right. I went to the truck and got the post hole diggers and a new cedar post I had in the back. I dragged them through the mud to the broken spot. I cut the wire loose from the old post and kicked the rotten wood aside. I started digging. The diggers were the clamshell type, 2 heavy shovels hinged together. You slammed them into the ground, pulled the handles apart, and lifted the dirt out. Thud, snap, lift, thud, snap, lift. The mud was heavy. It sucked at the shovel blades. Every load was a struggle. My shoulders burned. My breath came in short gasps. Thud, I hit a rock. I cursed. I reached down into the hole, muddy water seeping into my gloves, and felt around. It was a big one. A limestone rock, jagged and stuck fast in the clay. I went back to the truck and got the heavy iron pry bar. It was 5 feet of solid steel. I jammed it into the hole and levered it against the rock. I pushed with all my might. The rock didn't move. "Come on," I grunted. I pushed harder. My boots slipped in the mud. I reset my feet and tried again. I could feel the veins in my neck bulging. The rock shifted just a little. I repositioned the bar and shoved again. It moved more. I got down on my knees, ignoring the wet, and reached into the hole. I got my fingers under the edge of the stone. I heaved. It came free with a sucking sound. I pulled it out and threw it into the grass. I sat back on my heels, panting. My heart was hammering in my chest like a trapped bird. I looked at the rock. It was white and rough. It had been down there for 1,000 years, maybe more, and I had moved it. I finished digging the hole. I put the new post in. It smelled sharp and spicy, that good cedar smell. I shoveled the dirt back in and tamped it down, walking around the post, packing the earth tight with my boots. Then came the wire. I had to stretch it again to reach the new post. I hooked the stretchers on and cranked the handle. Click, click, click. The wire tightened. I nailed the staples in. The sound rang out across the empty field. It sounded like a gunshot. When I was done, I shook the post. It was solid. It didn't move an inch. It would stand there for another 20 years, maybe longer, maybe long after I was gone. I gathered my tools. The sun was starting to dip low in the west. The light was turning golden, making the dry grass look like it was on fire. The shadows of the trees were stretching out long and thin across the pasture. I walked back to the truck. I was tired. A deep, bone-weary tired, but it was a good tired. It was the kind of tired that let you sleep at night without dreaming. I drove back to the house. The house looked lonely sitting there on the hill. The windows were dark. I hadn't left any lights on. I parked the truck and got out. The wind had died down. It was quiet, too quiet. I walked up to the porch. I saw something on the mat. It was a piece of paper stuck under a rock so it wouldn't blow away. I bent down and picked it up. It was a business card, glossy, fancy lettering. Horizon Development Group, it said. Mark Sterling, Senior Acquisitions. There was a handwritten note on the back. Stopped by to say hello, would love to chat about your property. We can make a very generous offer, call me. I stared at the card, my hands started to shake, just a little. I crushed the card in my fist, crumpling the glossy paper into a tight ball. I looked out at the darkening fields, my fields. I threw the paper ball into the yard. I went inside and didn't turn on the lights. I walked to the kitchen and washed my hands in the sink. The water was cold. I scrubbed the dirt and the grease off my skin. I used the harsh soap, the one with the grit in it. I scrubbed until my skin was red. I dried my hands on a dish towel. I walked into the living room and sat down in my armchair. The leather was worn and cracked, molded to the shape of my body. I sat there in the dark. I listened to the house settle. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall was loud. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It was counting down the seconds. I wasn't hungry for dinner. I just wanted to sit. My eyes fell on the fireplace mantel. There were photos there, me and Sarah on our wedding day, my parents, and a picture of my son David. He was in California now. He was a computer programmer. He made good money. He didn't have calluses on his hands. He didn't know how to mend a fence. He hadn't been home in 2 years. I wondered what he would say if I sold the place. Would he care? Would he take the money? Or would he be angry? Dad, you can't sell the farm, I could hear him say, but he said it from 1,000 miles away from an air-conditioned office. He didn't have to fix the roof, he didn't have to pay the taxes, he didn't have to fight the rot and the rust. I closed my eyes, I felt old, older than the fence posts. The phone rang, it startled me. The sound was shrill in the quiet house. I let it ring twice, 3 times. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to talk to Mark Sterling from Horizon Development, but it kept ringing. I sighed and pushed myself up out of the chair. I walked to the wall phone in the kitchen. I picked up the receiver. Hello, my voice was raspy. Dad. It was David. My heart skipped a beat. David, everything all right? Yeah, everything's fine, he said. His voice sounded clear like he was in the next room. Just calling to check in, it's been a while. It has, I said, 2 months. I know, work has been crazy, big project launch. That's good, I said, busy is good. How are things there, he asked, how's the farm? I looked out the kitchen window. It was pitch black outside now. I could only see my own reflection in the glass, a gray-haired man holding a phone. The farm is fine, I said, fixed the south fence today. That's good, he said. There was a pause, a long silence filled with static. Dad, he said, his tone changed, it was serious now. Yeah. I was talking to Aunt Martha. She told me about the Miller place, about the developers. News travels fast in a small family. Yeah, Carter told me today. Have they approached you? David asked. I looked at the crumpled ball of paper in the yard, hidden by the dark. Someone left a card. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said. I threw it away. Dad, David said. He hesitated. Maybe you should listen to them. What? I gripped the phone tighter. What? I mean, just listen, David said quickly. You're getting older. That place is a lot of work, alone. If the money is good, maybe it's time to retire, move somewhere easier. Closer to me, maybe. Closer to him, California, concrete and traffic and no seasons. This is my home, David, I said. I know, Dad, but it's just dirt, it's just a house. It's not just dirt, I snapped. My voice rose. It's your grandfather's dirt, it's where your mother is buried, it's where you grew up. I know, he said softly, but Mom is gone and I'm not coming back to farm, Dad, you know that. When you're gone, what happens to it? I didn't have an answer for that. That was the question that kept me awake at night. If I held on to it until I died, David would just sell it anyway. He would sell it to the highest bidder and the bulldozers would come then. I ain't dead yet, I said. I didn't say you were, I'm just being practical. Practical, I muttered. Is that what they teach you in California? Dad, don't get mad. I'm not mad, I said, but I was. I was mad at him and mad at the world and mad at my own aching knees. I'm tired, David, I had a long day. Okay, he said, he sounded hurt. I'm sorry, I just worry about you. I can take care of myself. Okay, I'll call you next week. Sure, next week. Love you, Dad. Love you too, son. I hung up the phone, the click was loud. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, the refrigerator hummed. I felt a draft coming from the window. The caulking was cracking there too, another thing to fix. I walked back to the living room, but I didn't sit down, I felt restless. My skin felt too tight, I went to the front door and opened it. The night air rushed in, it was cold now, a real bite to it. The crickets were singing, a rhythm that rose and fell. I stepped out onto the porch. I looked toward the Miller place. I couldn't see anything, but I could imagine it. I could imagine the lights of the new houses, the street lamps, the noise. I looked up at the sky. The stars were bright, thousands of them. The Milky Way was a smear of white paint across the black. You couldn't see stars like that in the city. You couldn't see anything in the city. I walked down the steps into the yard. The grass was wet with dew. It soaked my socks, but I didn't care. I walked over to where I had thrown the card. I found it. It was wet and crinkled. I picked it up. I uncrumpled it carefully. Mark Sterling, Senior Acquisitions. I stared at it in the moonlight. I put the card in my pocket, not because I was going to call him, but because I wanted to remember the enemy's name. I walked to the barn. The big sliding door was heavy. I pushed it open and flipped the switch. The yellow bulb flickered on, casting long shadows. My tractor sat there. It was an old John Deere, green and yellow, covered in grease. It needed an oil change. The combine was in the back, covered with a tarp. I walked over to the workbench. My tools were hanging on the pegboard: hammers, wrenches, screwdrivers. Each one had its place. My dad had built this workbench. The wood was stained with 50 years of oil and sweat. I ran my hand over the vice grip. It was cold iron. I wasn't done yet. David was wrong. It wasn't just dirt. It was blood. It was history. You don't sell history. You don't sell your soul for a condo in California. But the fear was there. It was a cold knot in my stomach. What if I couldn't do it anymore? What if the fence fell down faster than I could put it back up? What if I got sick? I looked at the corner of the barn where the old branding irons hung. We didn't brand cattle anymore, used ear tags now, but I kept them. The metal was rusted. I heard a noise outside, a twig snapping. I turned off the light and stepped into the shadows. I listened. There was the sound of footsteps on gravel, slow, deliberate steps. Someone was walking up the driveway. I didn't have a dog anymore. Buster died last winter. I was alone. I grabbed a shovel from the wall. It wasn't a gun, but it was heavy. I held it tight. I moved to the barn door and peered out. A figure was standing near my truck, a man. He was wearing a suit. In the middle of the night, in the middle of the country, he was wearing a suit. He was looking at the house. He took a step toward the porch. I stepped out of the barn. "Can I help you?" I called out. My voice was steady. The man jumped. He turned around. "Oh, I didn't think anyone was awake." "I'm awake," I said. I walked toward him, keeping the shovel low but ready. "Who are you?" He raised his hands. "Mark Sterling." "I left a card earlier. I was just driving by and saw the light in the barn, thought I'd take a chance." "At 10 o'clock at night?" I asked. "I work late," he said. He smiled. It was a practice smile. "I apologize for the intrusion. I know it's late, but this property, it's quite remarkable." "It's private property," I said, "and you're trespassing." "Technically, I'm on the driveway," he said. He took a step closer. "Look, mister, I didn't catch your name." "Doesn't matter," I said. "Get off my land." "Sir, please, just 5 minutes. The offer we prepared for the Miller estate, it was substantial. We could offer you even more. This location is prime, the view of the valley." "The view is why I live here," I said, "not why I sell it." "Well, everyone has a price," Sterling said. He reached into his jacket pocket. I tightened my grip on the shovel. "Don't." He froze. "I'm just getting a brochure. It shows our vision: sustainable living, community-focused." "I have a community," I said. "It's me and the cows. We get along fine." He chuckled like I had told a joke. "That's charming, really, but think about the future, the maintenance on a place like this, the cost. We can make you a wealthy man. You could travel, relax." "I relax when the work is done," I said, "and the work ain't done." Sterling sighed. He dropped his hands. "Look, I'm trying to be nice, but the development is happening next door. Construction starts next month. Heavy machinery, noise, dust. The road will be widened. Traffic will increase. It's not going to be the quiet farm you know anymore. You might as well get out while the value is at its peak." He was threatening me, not with violence but with progress. He was telling me that my world was ending whether I liked it or not. "Get in your car," I said, "sir." "Get in your car." I raised the shovel an inch. Sterling looked at the shovel, then at my face. He saw something there that made him stop smiling. "All right," he said. "All right, I'm leaving, but think about it. You have my card." "I threw it in the mud," I said. He frowned. He turned and walked back to his car. It was a black sedan parked down on the road. I hadn't even heard it pull up. He got in and drove away. The red tail lights faded into the dark. I stood there in the driveway. The shovel felt heavy in my hands. My heart was racing again. He was right. The noise, the dust, the traffic, it was coming like a storm front moving in from the west. I looked at the house. It looked small against the night sky. I walked back to the porch. I put the shovel down. I sat on the swing. It hung from rusty chains. I pushed off with my foot. Creak, creak. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I knew that. I watched the road. I waited for the next pair of headlights. I waited for the future to come rolling up my driveway to try and buy me out. But for now, it was just the wind and the crickets and the smell of the pine trees. I took a deep breath. It smelled like home. And as long as I had breath in my lungs, that's what it would be. I closed my eyes and listened to the dark.